You've just released Live at Giant Rock in audio format, and there's actually a DVD coming a little while later. And this new album is a live album, right? Only with previously unreleased tracks. And I would like to know when and how did you decide that you would capture this album live and on video?
The idea started for us to make a live performance, capture a live performance on film. And by the way, the DVD is out, and we have it. We're it was self-released, the DVD, the film, and we have it on our website, plasticcactus.com. It's available now. I'm shipping them myself now. The idea uh, was to make a film capturing our performance in the desert. Um, and the idea to release it as a record came after the results of the audio for the film were so good that we thought, wow, this could actually be a record as well. But the idea of making the film has been going around in our heads for many years, especially trying to, we grew up, the desert was our club. Coming up in the 80s and early 90s when we were performing a lot here in the desert, there were no clubs, there were no venues. So we started setting up performances out in the middle of the desert years ago, starting in the mid 80s. And when people started hearing about this, it became kind of like almost like folklore about these parties or these performances in the desert. And no one had ever really captured it. There was my cousin used to make videos of the bands playing at the generator parties, but it was always at night, and it was just really more focused on the band rather than the environment. So you really couldn't tell if it was somebody's backyard or some weird club, or it was out in the middle of the desert. And what Yawning Man really experienced was, that environment of playing outside influenced uh, our music. The environment of being out on a mesa somewhere or out at a remote location, uh, sometimes scenic and sometimes maybe not so much, but just the freedom of being out, and also, setting these things up ourselves. We didn't have to play to any kind of schedule. So there wasn't like a booking agent that said, okay, you go on at 8 o'clock and you got to get off at 9 o'clock and you're going to play between this band. We'd set these things up or just go out there to make music by ourselves. We'd take a case of beer and a barbecue, and we'd go out to several different locations around the desert and just play all afternoon into the evening. But um, the idea to capture it on film was, the inspiration was to really bring that thing that we were so used to experiencing, very normal thing to us, to show it to people, because it was quite extraordinary. It was quite unique because most of these places are very scenic and have a kind of a magical vibe about them, an energy. And I always wanted to capture it somehow. And the music plays well in that environment because it was, really kind of created in that environment. A lot of it was. We started thinking about it 20 years ago, but there was no way to do it because, making movies and videos and things, it was a big expensive thing. You could maybe, my cousin had a video camera that was pretty nice, but it was cumbersome, big thing, and it had to be plugged into the tape unit, and and then to hire a video crew or a filmmaker and an editor and a blah and a blah, it would just be, very, very expensive. So we never got into making videos for our songs, or because it was just beyond our means financially. Um, but as technology caught up, and you could, with iPhones and these editing software that is accessible to anybody, um, we started thinking, we can do this and do it ourselves and make something that looks pretty beautiful,
Yeah, and
uh, and
drones too, right? There are a lot of views captured by drones in the live at Giant
ex-
Rock.
exactly, the drone footage was so effective. And this is
Indeed.
something that, kids are flying these things around and they capture high def video. Um, so it was just the timing of everything. We had Yawning Man was looking at making a new record and going on some tours at the time COVID took over. We had just gotten home from Australia, our first time to Australia. We got home in February. And then, of course, in March, we almost got stuck in Australia. As close as it was, they started shutting down incoming flights just weeks after we arrived home. So all our plans for the rest of the year, we had 3 festivals, recording planned, um, and then we would have already done a tour in Europe. So we were planning to release a record for all these things we had coming up. All that was taken away, and I thought, me and Gary, the guitar player, my partner in the band, we started talking that this is the time to make our film, because it's we're going to be in a remote location. We can socially distance. We can capture this performance. We have time. We're all nobody's working. Everybody's, we have time to focus on it and take care of all the details. Pull together some guys to help us film it. And it just so happened that at the same time, uh, I'm a partner in these festivals that happen here called Stoned and Dusted.
Hmm.
And this festival was canceled because of COVID. And as a something to celebrate the weekend and offer our fans that come from all over to this little festival. People come from all over the place. It's a very small festival, but it's very unique, and it has a one night at a beautiful venue here called Pappy and Harriet's, and the next night is out at a location in the desert called Boulder Gardens. Beautiful, beautiful, near the Joshua Tree National Park. So the idea was, we're going to have a virtual festival. So we're going to show some footage of the past uh, Stoned and Dusted days, and then have some bands. We're going to send in some content to show on over 2 days, a
Yeah,
webcast.
that happened. What? It's a Wizard, Californian Wizard Association.
That's correct. So, my partner Ryan asked me, do you want to come up to jam with Brant Bjork at his studio in the high desert, and we make a little some special performance? And I thought, this could be the perfect opportunity to shoot this thing, and we'll bang it together and have it ready for this couch lock and rock,
Mm.
uh, which is what they called the virtual festival for Stone and Dusted. So we did that. It was like we had a deadline. We got everybody together. We went out 6 in the morning to Giant Rock, which is it's about I guess 35 minutes from where I live, maybe 10 minutes from where Gary lives in the high desert. It's in a place called Landers, and Giant Rock has an incredible history. It's had history for hundreds of years, really, because the Native Americans were gravitated to it for different ceremonies, prayer ceremonies, and things like this. And then scientists realized that it had some sort of an energy going on there. So it's a vortex of some kind. And one scientist actually moved there from Germany. Um, and this is, back in the 50s and 60s, but and built an incredible thing that was supposed to harness unbridled energy, and be able to create electricity and power. And it's called the Integratron. And it's about a quarter of a mile away from Giant Rock. And George Van Tessel is the name of the scientist. And there's a great documentary to learn more about Giant Rock. It's a great thing to watch our film live at Giant Rock, and then also watch, it's called Calling All Earthlings. And it's basically a history of George Van Tessel's research at Giant Rock, the building of the Integratron, this energy creating invention that it's actually a big dome building, but it's amazing. And they go into some history. He was also a UFO. I don't want to say enthusiast, but he was like what they call the close encounter of the fifth kind. So he's had contact, and they think that Giant Rock was almost like a runway for extraterrestrials. So it's just got this incredible, colorful history, as well as this amazing energy, and visually it's stunning.
Yes, it
It's
is.
beautiful. It's very unique. It almost looks like a moonscape or something. It's very
Yeah, it's
unique part of the desert. Yeah,
otherworldly.
exactly. So it came together that way, and was filmed and edited within a week by amazing work by Sam Grant, who
Who
was
works
one
with
of the
you on, yeah, on Stone and Dusted,
photographers.
right?
Yes, he actually is the event photographer for those events, and also contributes a lot of the photography to make the posters and things like that. But yeah, it was to pull it off in a week. It was edited along the film was edited along with all the other content for the Couch Lock and Rock webcast. So
Yeah.
it was really amazing what he was able to do. We had 4 different cameras, two cell phones, one SLR, 35 millimeter SLR, and digital, and then also the drone. Um, and it's amazing how much of that was shot on phones. So it's nice. It's nice it's inspiring to look at it and go, well, anybody can do this kind of stuff. Of course, we had the benefit of this beautiful, incredible spot, which is the star of every shot, is this incredible environment that we're in. But anyway, yeah. So that's in a nutshell. And the audio came out so nicely, and that was really, we set up a console that would be used for live sound,
Hmm.
and mic'd up the band and used some of the presets that you'd use for like a live concert performance to get good drum sounds and good sounds on the bass and the guitars. And we got a mix in the headphones out in the desert. We were like listening on the headphones. That sounds good. And we let it roll. And when we came back after, we had 2 tracks, left and right. There was no mixing or any of that. It was, we mastered it, of course, for vinyl. But so the whole thing just kind of fell into place in such a beautiful way. Um, and I don't think it could go so smoothly trying it a second time, because it just happened. Everything happened so nicely.
Yeah, so it would have been a shame not to release it in audio only.
Oh no,
Not to release
the
it in audio. Sorry, not to release it in audio.
yes, yeah. The idea was film first, and then the audio sounded so good. And then we reached out to Heavy Psych Sounds to handle the release of the album and the CD. So
Okay,
it's been a nice collaboration on everybody's part.
all right. And so the structure of the album is also different from your previous albums. There are only 5 songs. They are all more than 730 minutes long. The longest one is nearly 15 minutes.
Mm.
And can you tell us a bit more about that? Why did you go this way?
Well, it wasn't that we went a certain way. It was just the way the music went that day. There was because of this COVID situation, we had very little um, rehearsal with the band, even before it got very serious with lockdowns. We were just all at home, you know. So
Mhm.
getting together and working on material. The way this band works is we improvise a lot. We jam, improvise. We distill parts that seem to come together, and there's a melody and a counter melody. Um, but rarely do we work in the verse and chorus and bridge and verse chorus in the song.
Yeah,
It's much more, you know, we do try to reel it in when we make a full length album because every song can't be 15 minutes long.
yeah,
um, and we tried to change our approach to that, our our method, in the last couple of records to really focus more on songs rather than these improvisations that can go on and sometimes they rise and become very interesting and the ideas solidify, and other times it can just be we're searching, um the way we went into this recording or the filming was one day of rehearsal to find a couple melodies between the relationship between the guitar and the bass. Um, we found four of those. I think there was four pieces where we went. When I'm playing this, you'll play that. Four times in the whole record. So the rest of it is completely spontaneous improvise. And we didn't. We could only edit. We made one edit on the whole performance was for the vinyl because you can only have 22 minutes per side,
yeah,
and the performance was 54 minutes or something. So we had to remove a track, but we didn't edit any of the performances. We just let it go. It could have been the whole thing could have been one song, if we
yeah.
felt that day. But I can sense when I'm playing off Gary and off Bill, I can sense when it's time to just check out. We've gone this way, we've gone that way. We maybe have visited a theme or gotten repetitious in the rhythm section. And I think, okay, I think we've worked this through. We've visited everywhere we can visit here. It's time to check out. So sometimes that happens in 5 minutes, and sometimes it happens in 25 minutes. But that's how the music was. It was not,
Yeah.
and I think it's kind of obvious when you listen to it that
Yes, it is.
there,
Indeed.
yeah, there are points that come together where there's a plan, and then there's a lot of where we make it up as we go, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah, which is the spirit of us playing in the desert
Of course.
in the first place, because that's what we went out there to do, not just that day, but for the last 30 years,
Hmm.
that's when you go out there. It's weird when you're outside, like, I started playing out in the desert when I played in punk bands, hardcore punk bands. And while it was fun, and it was freeing, it had freedom because everyone could drink and have a bonfire and do what you want to do, make all the noise you want to make. Um, but the music didn't fit the environment. It didn't it didn't fit, you know. It was just like, we are playing music out in the desert because we won't get busted by the police, and we can drink and carry on and have a big bonfire and have fun, and we're away from people. Whereas the difference was when we started to play Yawning Man's music out in the desert and creating it organically in these jam sessions, it started to reflect the freedom and the just the lack of uh, construct. How can I say? You know, when you are in a rehearsal room and your mindset is, we're gonna write songs to go play at the nightclub. Okay, so we're gonna write a set of songs and we're gonna go. You may jam for a while with your buddies, you jam, you have some fun, and then everything stops and you go, okay, now we're going to work on the songs. So the thing with Yawning Man is that we did work on songs. You know, I'm not saying we didn't compose things, but a huge part of the fun and the spirit of what got us out to play was the the always the spontaneous experiment of what's going to happen in the music. And also, I don't want to sound lazy, but there was no pressure. There was no pressure to meet, you know, a song is like, it's like a math equation. The stuff we used to write was so complicated. It was like, we had this band called the Sort of Quartet. After it was Yawning Man, but Yawning Man changed the name, and we created this other, we were just creating this other approach. And it was almost like we got bored of the improvising, we got bored of the open, more fluid sound, and we wanted more rigidity, more calculation, execution, more technical. You know, we were listening to like King Crimson and Zappa and you know, prog rock from the 70s, jazz, avant-garde jazz, bebop, and things like that. And so we were, you know, everything went from this flowing thing like this to, and we got into that, and that had its own, you know, incredible reward. But we we wore ourselves out with all that
It
math,
wasn't the
you know.
sound of the desert.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I don't know what it was the sound of actually, but it was a response to all those years of just playing back in the flow. And but we eventually come back to the flow. And now I think what Gary and I are doing, Gary's very prolific at ideas. He's always got some kind of idea going, whether it's music, a lick on the guitar, a sound, a art, whatever. He's you know, very creative in that way. But flight, it goes and goes, and he gets excited about one idea musically, and then by tomorrow he's over it and he's on to the next one. So, you know, one thing I like in this next album we're going to do, um, we're going to experiment with different instruments, things like that, to kind of open up some different avenues rather than just, of course, it'll, you know, we're always bass, guitar, and drums. That's our core, but some synthesizers, maybe some acoustic instruments, some things that just open up some new avenues, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but you know, the desert has influenced our music. I'm so proud to say it too, because you know, we're proud of the way that we're grateful for the way that it's affected our music and the way we look at art, you know.
Sure. And you were talking about the location earlier. This giant rock. You talked about the
Yeah,
energies there. You talked about the splendid landscape. But
yeah.
I guess you also chose the location because maybe it's not the first time you play here.
No, it was the first time. Normally, uh, we would go to the first list I had for the film was going to be each jam would be at a different
Mhm.
location. So when you watch the film, the song would start, it would be in one location, maybe the Nude Bull here near my home is the Nude Bull. It's a famous pool for skateboarding out in the middle of the desert.
Yeah,
It was an old nudist colony back in the 60s.
yeah. You can see that in Low Sound, the Low Sound
Yes.
documentary, right?
Yeah. And if you Google Nude Bull, it comes up lots of incredible skateboarding stuff. And there's some videos of other bands playing out there over the years. But that would be one spot. Then we go to maybe there's some areas that are near the Joshua Tree National Park that are just amazing. But we had a list, you know, and then there's the places in the low desert that we grew up playing the parties at. And we had a list. They're not as pretty to look at. Those places we did most of the parties are just kind of rough and rugged areas that don't quite have the, you know, the kind of a magical
Majestic.
environment about it. Yeah, exactly. They're more just kind of you're out in the desert, you know. so,
It's just not a lot to
so
see around.
yeah, you know we used to have this thing. Um, we'd look for dry riverbeds to find spots to do parties because you could be driving along the road and wherever the riverbed crosses the road, that's a nice firm surface to drive your car on. So it's almost like its own little trail. So
Mhm.
we look for riverbeds and then follow the riverbeds up into the canyons and usually find a great spot that way and know that you maybe wouldn't get stuck in the sand. You know, cars would get stuck in the sand. And
Yeah.
so we always couple nights, you know, we chose places that were a little bit too far off and riverbeds tend to split, you know, so people would be following the riverbed and it would split into a fork and they'd take the wrong turn. And one night, a couple of times we did that, showing up to our own party, um, and we got lost. And everyone's waiting for us to show up with the generator, and you know, so
Good
we'd
stuff.
take a wrong turn up the riverbed. We'd have to park the van, turn off all the lights, and just sit and listen. And we could hear people like way off in some canyon over there. You could hear people, you know, just talking and yelling and laughing and stuff around the bonfire. So we'd, okay, it's that way, you know. Or if we turned off the lights, we could see maybe some headlights reflecting off the mountain, you know, or something. So yeah, some of those spots were pretty hard to get to.
Mhm.
And to make the movie, I wanted to make sure that we had to bring a lot of gear, and the sound guy was bringing, you know, a big truck to haul his console, and he was already out there. The guy that recorded the sound is an avid camper. He loves to go camp in the desert. So he said, "Oh yeah, I'll do the gig. I'll record the sound, and I'll just stay the whole weekend. I'm gonna bring my truck and just camp out there." So when we showed up, he was all set up. He had his whole camp set up, and,
Coffee,
it, and
coffee on the
yeah, it was
fire.
really, yeah, it was really cool. Yeah.
All right. And there's another choice that you made that is significant for this concert is the fact that there's no audience. I mean, of course, there's COVID, but you could have also chosen to have, distance crowd. It's not like there's a space missing over there, but you chose to do it without an audience.
Yes. Um, I th- I think the decision to do that was one that we wanted to reflect. We wanted the film to be intimate.
Hmm.
Uh, just the band and the desert. I we have because we couldn't secure the area or anything. So there are some mountain climbers. I'm sorry, rock climbers that are traversing the giant rock while we're playing, which actually turned out pretty cool. Um,
I think I saw a kid
but
at some point.
yeah, you see kid or you know, but the idea was to make it intimate and make it a little more magical feeling was to have just the band, the music, and the environment. I think where I also got the inspiration that that is a powerful thing is from Pink Floyd live at Pompeii.
I was about to
Uh,
mention it because yes, it is mentioned
yeah,
in
it
the
is.
description of the live.
It is. And the things we took from that in, that inspired us. The first time I saw that, I was like 18 years old, probably 1984. Um, and we
Pretty.
had started, we were, at the time I had a band called Across the River, and we were playing out in the desert here and there. And when I saw it, it just, I think I don't know, something about the, the audience is the people watching the film, not, you're not filming a performance of the audience watching it, but it just makes it elevates the art and it elevates the intimacy of the experience with the music.
It
Um,
is a pretty powerful experience. Yeah, I mean
it
the live at Pompeii. Yeah.
it is absolutely, and I love the way that the equipment, the 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 technical parts of a rock band playing at in ruins like that.
Hmm.
Of course, we don't have that kind of big, huge equipment setup, but I always admired that part of the eye that the filmmaker had for the way he filmed their equipment.
Making
The
a
the
character even in the movie.
yeah, the amplifiers, and just I don't know, it just became, and then of course juxtaposing that with the ruins, the incredible ruins and the art, the ancient art there, so it was just, it blew my mind and was definitely inspiring. Uh, an audience would have changed the whole, it just would have changed the whole vibe of the whole thing. It would not have been the same at
Sure.
all,
I understand.
you
I
know?
can understand that.
Yeah.
All right. So I also noticed a small detail is that you are actually the one starting the generator at the beginning of the movie. Is that a
Yeah.
special symbol or is it just random?
No, no, we wanted to show that is, that the generator in our days of when the desert was our venue, like I explained earlier,
Hmm.
um, the generator was just like the guitar amp. It was more important than the guitar amp.
Actually,
It
yeah,
was more
because
important. It was more important than now because it brought the magic of electricity into the middle of nowhere. And but we I've had a thing with generator, since I was a kid, and I just thought it was a cool thing to show how simple the basic setup was. We had the generator, we had an extension cord, two guitar amps, some drums, and that's it. And but definitely was a plan. You know, we planned. That was always an idea. We got to have a shot of
of the
either,
generator.
you know, setting up the generator. We got to honor the generator because that, you know, without that, we'd be out there in the drum circle, which would be beautiful, you know, but
Yeah,
not the same. So
yeah, of course. Well, anyway, I had access to the whole movie to prepare this interview, and it's quite spectacular, and it's something that, of course, us in Europe, most of us haven't seen. You know, all the generators party, all that, and even the Californian desert, except if you actually have been there.
yeah.
Um, but if that's okay, I'd like to extend a bit the discussion to other things and to talk a bit about you, Mario, because
Okay.
you're basically well, a legend of the desert rock scene. Yawning Man, as you mentioned, was one of the first bands actually to play in the generator parties, and ever since you've been an essential cornerstone of the desert rock scene, if not the most visible. And so, what keeps you going, basically? You know, to
Um,
support the scene, to continue helping artists out there do their sound, etc.
honestly, it's just, it's what I love. It's what I love to do. I mean, I was fortunate enough to find something that clicked with me as a young man, and I became passionate about it, you know. And I'm passionate about every part of it. The music, of course, but also the all the other things that come along with um, the performance, setting up performances, the art. I have my, you know, my little business here of uh, selling our merch, and I just love every little part of all of this thing. And the more, you know, I've been doing it for, I don't know, I've been doing it for 40
Nearly,
years.
yeah, around 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah, more than that. Well, 41, I think. I think I was in my first band at 14. So, um, but uh, I've never, there's never been a second where I was like, you know, I'm just kind of like, bored of this, or I've done this, that, I'm done with this or that. It's just, you know, I never looked at, and to my own fault, and to the fault of the band, I never looked at it as a business. Um, I never had aspirations to make music a career of some kind. Um, you know, we were talking about videos and stuff earlier, filming. Like you know, our bands never made videos. We never,
Hmm.
even though that was an incredible extension of the creativity, the process, which we realized that. But it was just at a you know, a certain point, a lot for a lot of bands, the video aspect, or uh, these other things you do to promote a record, or you do it to advance, you know, advance through your career. At some point, there's like all these things you need to do. You know, you need to have a manager, you need to have a booking agent, you need to have this, you need to have that. And we just always enjoyed all of it so much. We learned how to do it all ourselves, and that's kind of a blessing of growing up here in the desert too. Um, I don't know what keeps me going. It's just I couldn't keep going without it. It's like my pat. It's what I. It's like some guys love surfing, some guys love golf, some guys are, you know. It's like I have all that. It's like my hobby, my passion, my art, my and I'm I'll do it till you know, till my health prevents otherwise, because it's just, it's so much fun and so engaging, and it's amazing to express yourself in this way, you know, to And if you do it long enough, even if it's kind of a strange thing that's more obscure, or that maybe some people don't get and other people do identify with it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me that it reaches a bunch of people or anything
Well,
like that. I just enjoy it.
well, like, because actually, yeah. So desert rock. So it's about, as you said, about 40 years old now, and it took a while to grow outside of the stage. That means, of course, there was chaos, but they are still an exception, I would say. And the desert rock is now exported, let's say, worldwide, even if, well, it's still a bit of a niche genre. Now there are bands like you, like Yawning Man, as you said, you went to Australia, well, which is also desert country, I guess, but you toured to Europe, you toured a bit all over the world, and so what do you think appeals to people in desert rock, even those who actually have never been near a desert in their lives?
I think, well, that's part of it right there. I think part of it is there's something unique to the environment. Just all that stuff I was talking about,
Mhm.
giant rock and us playing outside, that resonates with people. Um, there's something pure about it. I think most of the bands that I think of as the bands that I think of as creating this genre, if you will, and what stands out about it is that it's independent expression. There's an expression of the independent person in it, that is nonconformist. It it's more art, less commerce, less. It's just more about now. There's very few bands in my mind that have those elements, those characteristics. But as a journalist, how things go with coining phrases and terms, as stoner rock or
Yeah,
punk
yeah, it's
rock
it's
or
uh,
death
it's
metal or blah
non-ending
blah.
non-ending list and
Do
a non-ending
Yeah,
debate.
doom. Yeah. And then now it's like, doom, emo, shoegaze wave, whatever. But the 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 thing that when I'm asked this question at the desert, the thing that seems to me that people resonate with is this: there's some honesty, and it's it's a kind of a pure, no bullshit. It's about, you know it reflects independence, and it reflects some sort of expression, and not with a bunch of frilly light, smoke and mirrors and lights. It's really just, very basic thing. Almost kind of like when you think of folk music, when you think of folk music, what resonated with people, not so much the really early folk music, but when it was, just a simple idea that reflected where people come from, you know, um, and all really groovy music that I enjoy has a connection to, like, where it came from, and it reflects the people that create it in an organic way. Uh,
It has an identity,
exactly.
a pronounced
But
identity.
yeah, but it's real. It's
Mm.
real. It's real. It's not manufactured to sell a product or to fit this label, because that label will get you X. It's expression. So I think that's what people resonate. I'd like to think that's what resonates with people about it. Um, when I liken it to when I was growing up, and me and Gary real huge fans of the punk scene in the 80s. So
Mhm.
we followed the Los Angeles punk scene very closely, very influential. Also, back east, DC, Washington DC was there's Discord was one record label, and SST was the West Coast. And when you look at those record labels and the bands and the artists and the art, and you look at what those people sounded like, what they, there was no look to it. There was no like, oh, you'd take one glance at them and you'd go, oh, well, that's what they sound like. They sound like he's got the leather jacket with spikes all over it, and he has big mohawk. Oh, he's gonna. I know what they sound like. They sound like GBH, or they sound like Discharge, or whatever. You look at like the Black Flag guys, or you look at Saccharine Trust, or you look at the Minutemen, or you look at the Meat Puppets, or you look at Husker Du, or you look at Minor Threat, or you look at Faith and Void, and these incredible bands, from those eras. I'm sorry, I
Yeah, I
keep
think we
getting low
lost the
battery.
video. Yeah, so
There it
it's on
goes.
the video.
Okay, you can't look at these guys and go, well, I pretty much know what that's going to sound like. And guaranteed, once you put the record on, you're going to be like, whoa, they all sound really different. How did that happen? That happened because they're expressing themselves.
Hmm.
You know, they're not expressing somebody else's idea of what it should sound like to be accepted and to be part of this thing. They're like, this is me. This is what I fucking sound like.
Yeah, so that can be
And
said for most of these bands.
the
Yeah.
the early desert the early desert music scene was influenced by that, by like, this is what we sound like, this is what we, not saying that, we have shit that sounds like Meat Puppets and Minutemen and Saccharine Trust because we are influenced by those guys.
Hmm. Well, you have to be influenced by
But
someone.
yeah, but we were also influenced by them, not only musically but also in their ethics and the purity of their expression. So while we were influenced by it, we were at the same time given a dose of do it yourself, do it your own way,
Hmm.
show yourself, express yourself.
All right. Yeah.
That's what I think the groovy part about this desert rock thing is that, it's become something different. It's a genre, has a sound, the heavy detuned guitar, whatever. There's a sound to it now. It's like Caius, everybody sound like Caius, or everybody's influenced by. It's like, you know, in the '70s, everybody sounded like Zeppelin or Sabbath or the Rolling Stones, or they tried to like, they wanted to sound like those bands because they were successful and they were great. They were fucking awesome. But some bands are really hard to sound like.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
I mean, how do you sound like Jimi Hendrix? That's, you know Stevie Ray Vaughan did a pretty good job kicking ass on the guitar like him, but there was no, he didn't sound like Hendrix. How do
Yeah.
you sound like ZZ Top? How do you sound? Some of these artists are so fucking there's elements you can pick, but anyway, that's a long answer to your
Yeah.
question.
But it's anyway. It's I do think it's always better if even if you have to take your influence from somewhere, it's always better to keep your identity and to do your own thing.
Of course.
I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, and most people do. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. All right. So one question I had that I should maybe have mentioned earlier, and it is why did Yawning Man wait nearly 20 years to finally release an album?
Uh, okay. Well, it's good because I've already laid the foundation to answer this question.
Yeah.
Earlier, I mentioned a band called the Sort of Quartet.
Hmm.
So, Yawning Man started in about 1986. Okay. and Yawning Man rose from the ashes of Across the River. Across the River was Scott Reeder, Alfredo Hernandez, myself, and a guy named Mark Anderson from here. Great guitar player, a little younger than us. That band ran its course. And then Alfredo, in the meantime, Gary and Alfredo were living with me in my house in La Quinta. My cousin was a roommate there. My cousin really hadn't had much experience playing music, and neither had Gary. Gary was very new to the guitar. He didn't own a guitar himself when he first moved in, but he picked mine up all the time and eventually got his own. And my cousin, the same. I think they both messed around on acoustic guitar a lot with their thumb, boop, 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 boop. And then, and I'm getting to answer your question. I'm going
Take
to
your
go
time.
off on a tangent. So we started Yawning Man out of this. We just wanted to jam in the garage.
Mhm.
So we started. We went crazy. We just were playing every day, every day, every day. We all lived together, so that made it really easy. And we lived in a house that had the garage was converted into a jam space. So it was very simple for us to get together a lot. It wasn't. We literally were like brothers living in the house and jamming every day after work into the night. Um, Yawning Man in the 80s, releasing records, first of all, was not even in the front of our mind. All we wanted to do, all we dreamed of doing was writing music, playing music, getting out and performing it. We didn't have big thoughts about making a record, putting a record out. It wasn't part of we were just playing.
Mhm.
Um, and back then, making a record was a lot different
Than,
than
than
making
nowadays.
a recording now. We had a little 4-track recorder. I had a TAC, and we recorded stuff with that. But just going into a recording studio is very expensive, very. It was a big deal, and nowadays you have a laptop and you can download free software and have an amazing studio in your laptop. It's like back then it was different, and where we lived, there wasn't recording studios on every corner. We were only 2 hours from Los Angeles, but anyway, there was a lot of reasons that we didn't
Mhm.
make a bunch of records because we had a bunch of music. We did make a demo tape, which we've released, um, and it wasn't a demo tape to us. It was our recording. That was our recording. It's like 30 songs.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
and we put that out on cassette, and then we started to get a little bored with what we were playing. We got bored with the name of the band, and we wanted to entertain ourselves a little bit more. So we changed the name of the band. The music started changing. We started, like I said before, we started listening to a lot of different progressive rock,
Okay.
avant-garde jazz, bebop, and we became fascinated with the 50s and 60s bebop, especially Mingus, Monk, and we in Coltrane and Miles Davis, this stuff, which led to a bunch of other stuff. Archie Shepp was, anyway. So we wanted to change the name. We changed the name, and the music kind of changed. But that band was Alfredo, Gary, my cousin, and myself. So we changed the name from Yawning Man to the Sort of Quartet. And then we made our first CD. We were self-released. And a couple of years later, we were invited to make some records with SST. So we put out 3 records on SST, the Sort of Quartet, in the late 80s and early 90s. And then in the mid 90s, we released a record or in the late 90s, we released another record on a German label called Cripple Dick Hot Wax. And that record's called Victim a la Mode. But the Sort of Quartet released 6 records in that time frame between Yawning Man and then Larry left the band, and we became a 3-piece again, and we took the name Yawning Man back, and because the music had again kind of changed back to our more flowing approach, and that's when we made Rock Formations. But you got to understand that the same guys and the same inspiration for music released a bunch of records in all
Yeah,
that
yeah.
time. It was
During the
yeah,
time that
it was just under a different name. But
the Yawning Man
and you know,
hiatus, let's say.
yeah, we called it the Sort of Quartet,
Sort of
and
quartet.
that's what we, but it was the same band. So, there was never like, why, we didn't just stop and then all of a sudden,
Yeah,
15 years later make a record. That's
of course,
but
but
yeah, that's why.
yeah, not a lot of people know this.
Yeah, and I like to get the word out about it because we made some music that I'm very proud of and I think people would enjoy. It's interesting music, and the Sort of Quartet. So it's out there. I'm going to try to get a lot. SST owns a lot of the music, so it's hard. The deal was not so great for us because we were just so happy to be part of SST. It was an incredible thing for us. It was a big deal for us to be on the SST records. But the publishing and all this, the ability to repress the records, we don't have the say in that. So it's a little bit more difficult to hear that music. But there's some stuff out on YouTube, and I'm figuring out a way that we can maybe get back
It would
that
be
music
great.
and re-release it. Yeah.
It would be great indeed. So we're nearing 1 hour. So I'm gonna let you go at some point, but
Okay.
before that, one last question,
Yes.
and it would be, what's up for you, Mario, and Yawning Man when we're finally rid of COVID? Hopefully, sometime in 2021.
Well, we had a tour booked with. We're working on a new record.
Hmm.
We're going to reissue a bunch of our old music. Our old records are going to be reissued with new uh, limited editions, really beautifully done. I'm very excited about that. And we're working on a new record. So we're starting rehearsals next, not this weekend, but the next weekend. Very careful, socially distant rehearsals. We're trying to be so careful because we want to get back to normal, man. Not normal, but we want to get back to work. We want to see people out hearing music and eating at restaurants and going to the movies and getting well and working and businesses open. And so the way to do that is to be careful
Yeah.
right now and get until we get all these vaccines going. And so tours were canceled, postponed, and pushed. But we do have one on the books. We'll see. We cross our fingers. We're supposed to tour Europe with Color Haze in our September and October of 2021.
I can tell you, I'll be there.
So that's going to be exciting, really great. We those guys, we
uh,
have a long relationship with
yeah,
them.
you know them very, you know them well, Colores.
We know them. We've had many Duna Jam experiences with them,
Hmm.
and performed with them in the early days. We had supported them on a few shows. But yeah, we've known those guys for years. So it's going to be exciting
Well, they're a
to
bit
get
your
back.
European, they're a bit your European counterparts. I mean, as
Yes,
far as the longevity and
exactly. Yeah. So we're supposed to, the original plan was going to be our first time ever doing this. We were going to travel together on a bus. I've never done. I always drive the van. You know, we go to Europe, I rent a little van and we drive. And we go to a hostel or a hotel, or maybe we sleep in the band apartment above the stage, you know, or somebody's floor. But this time, our agent Mate from Sound of Liberation, he said,
Yes.
"No, we're gonna do a." He called it a nightliner tour. So I was like, "Wow, wow, that sounds wild." I did one time. I toured with the Queens of the Stone Age, their first tour of Europe, and Fatso Jetson was supporting them, and Gary was in the band then too. So we were both. Oh, what a time we had a. But that we were all on this bus together, you know, and it was quite. Back then we were all, you know, quite the partiers. So it was pretty crazy experience. But now I think with COVID and even the remnants of it in a year, I can't imagine that everyone's going to be given the clear green light. It would be a miracle if it happens. But I can't imagine that we'll all be on the same bus together. But that's the plan. We're supposed to go to Europe for a month and a half with Color Haze and some festivals. And God, I hope it happens. I'm really praying.
Fingers
It would be
crossed.
wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah, it would be. It would be nice
yeah.
to see you in Europe again.
We
Uh,
miss it so much. What we take for granted, you know,
a lot
I'll
of
tell
things we
you.
took for granted.
Yeah. But that's one of the blessings of this thing is that you get to see, wow, life is amazing, you know. We gotta take care of each other, you know.
All right. And I would like to end with this. Is there any latest musical discovery you'd like to share? Some underrated bands you feel are not getting the attention they deserve?
Mm. You know, it's hard.
I know, sorry.
No, it's a good question. I'm trying to think of local band. Well, I would always want to plug my son's band, of course. My
Feel
son's
free.
band
Feel free.
my son's band is called Big Pig, and they're amazing. You can hear their music on uh, go to plasticcactus.com, and we have their 7-inch available. But and it's great. One band that I've really enjoyed lately, and it's not a unrecognized band, but maybe some of your listeners maybe, is a band called Dive, Diiv.
Oh, German,
And
right? Or Danish?
no, no, they're from here. They're from
Oh, yeah. So I
originally
was thinking
from
on one other one. Yeah. Sorry.
it's okay. The originally from Brooklyn. Now they live in Los Angeles. I don't know if you know fans that tune into you will resonate with it, but that has been a on my turntable constantly. Also, I love the band True Widow, um, and I think that band is an example of what we were talking about, that desert, what what people are attracted to by the term desert rock. And it's very unique sounding band, but still heavy and still has those elements of the heavy rock scene. But True Widow and Dive, those are two great bands that I've been listening to a lot. Yeah, I guess you know that's what I could suggest right now.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Mario. It was a pleasure and an honor to have you live.